Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my channel again. So today we are learning the literary terms, literary devices and the poetic devices. So if you are preparing for PPSC examination or any entrance exam, so these are the key terms that you should know regarding literature and language. So let's see what these terms are. Literary devices are common structures in writing that make up the components of literature. We use these devices to help us interpret and analyze the literary works. The names of literary devices may also be called literary terms. Literary terms include both literary elements and literary techniques. So there are certain structural examples for it. For example, compare. So here we find similarities between two works or among more works. So we find that what is common in them and what are the similarities. Then we come to contrast, that in which we are aiming to find the differences. So we can find differences between two poetic works, two novels, two dramas, two writers or their writing styles. Then comes biography. So this is a non-fiction piece of literature and that is written about someone by someone. So it is not about writing a person's own self, it is writing about the life of someone else. Whereas in autobiography, which is also a non-fiction piece, and it is written about the person himself. So writer talks about his own feelings, his own works, his own experiences shared by him, like Eugene O'Neill and Ernest Hemingway. They are used to of using this autobiographical technique in their novels and plays respectively. Literary elements are the essential parts of storytelling that are found in almost all types of literary and narrative writing. So the following that we are going to discuss, they are all the literary elements. For example, plot, character, conflict, setting, theme, and point of view. Plot. So the plot is how the author arranges events to develop his basic idea. It is a sequence of events in a story or play. The plot is a planned, logical series of events having a beginning, middle, and end. And Aristotle, in his Poetics, gives maximum importance to the plot. And according to him, this is the pyramid of a play based on the plot. So it begins with exposition, and then comes some inciting incident, which is some revelation of some conflict. Then there is rising action, in which story moves towards complication and then climax. And from climax, the story moves back towards resolution through reversal and falling action. And after resolution, there is denouement, which is the tentative ending of the play. So this is our strategy or the pyramid that is portrayed by Aristotle in Poetics. This is a 7-point plot presented by German playwright Gustav Freytag. So it's his pyramid, which begins with exposition, then comes the inciting action, that is some conflict which is revealed, rising action in which story further moves towards climax, then there is falling action, and then there is resolution. So there is a smaller change between the plot of Aristotle and that of Freytag's, and basically it is the change in the custom of tragedy from Greeks to the contemporary writers. So exposition is the beginning of the story where the characters and settings are revealed. The exposition can also be called introduction. So since Aristotle loved Oedipus Rex, so we'll be taking an example from that. In Oedipus Rex, the exposition comes when the chorus members are there and Oedipus himself comes to the stage and says, "I, Oedipus, who bears the famous name." So from there we learn about the characters and about the situation. Rising action comes, so this is a part of the story where a conflict is revealed, which is the inciting force, and it becomes more pronounced as the story progresses. So rising action is all the events between introduction and the climax. So it begins when Creon brings a command from Delphi that God commands us to expel from the land of Thebes an old defilement that it seems we shelter. So people start finding the person who is the defilement. So this is the rising action. The climax is the highest point of interest. This is the turning point of the story, or the moment of greatest suspense. The reader wonders what will happen next. Will the conflict be resolved or not? So this is tentatively in Oedipus Rex when we learn that Oedipus and Jocasta, they're almost reaching the conclusion. Tiresias has already explained a lot, and Oedipus to some extent is sure about himself, but still he is into his investigation. Falling action is the point when the complications they begin to resolve themselves. The falling action is all of the events between the climax and resolution. So after that, when the shepherd testifies that Oedipus is the son of Laius, and he happens to be the person about whom all these prophecies were given. So from there to end, it was the falling action, and the resolution is when which is a final outcome or untangling of events in the story. So resolution may also be called denouement. So this is when Oedipus blinds himself and comes to the audience again, and then he is ostracized, he is expelled from the land of Thebes as he commanded the same thing, but he didn't know that it was situational irony, and he was giving the command for himself. So the plot can only exist in a narrative piece. The main character is placed in a situation that contains a problem he or she must overcome. Therefore, conflict exists. So conflict is basically there in every narrative piece which brings something to climax, which is exposed properly or solved properly at the climax. So it is a problem basically that is to be solved. Most stories have minor characters who either help or hinder the main character's attempt to solve the conflict. There can be many different types of the characters within a story. For example, in Oedipus Rex again, Creon is there to help, but again Oedipus is against him. Tiresias comes to help, but Oedipus doesn't accept what he says. So these people are the characters which are helping the main character, or in other way they can create hindrance in the role of the main character to solve the conflict. We have certain types of characters. So protagonist is the person who is the main character or the central character. So the story moves around the protagonist. Antagonist is a kind of a villain. So this character opposes the protagonist. Often he or she is an opponent to the main character. Like Creon in Oedipus Rex, like he was not against him, but Oedipus thought he was against him. So to Oedipus, he was an antagonist. So antagonist is the person who opposes the protagonist. Like Iago in Othello is antagonist, and Othello himself is protagonist. Secondary characters, so the minor characters that are neither they are protagonist nor antagonist, they are called the minor characters, so secondary characters. For example, in that Rodrigo or Desdemona, so such characters are the minor or secondary characters. Flat characters are those characters which are one-dimensional, like they stay the same, they don't have any change in their behavior throughout the play or novel. Round characters are the complex characters, and they undergo certain development. And sometimes this development is much too much that even the reader is surprised. Static characters, they don't go through a change, and they are usually one-dimensional. So static characters and flat characters are same. Dynamic characters and round characters are same, because they are always those characters which go through a change or who suffer some change. Most importantly, a mental change. So we learn about any character in 5 different ways. So first of all, what the character says. So for example, Oedipus says, I, Oedipus, who bears the famous name. So from here we come to know or conclude that he happens to be a proud person, and this is his arrogance and pride that is eventually leading him to his downfall. What the character thinks. So when we see what Oedipus is thinking about the whole situation, especially about Creon and Tiresias, we come to know that he is not being wise, and he is being rash in his judgments. What the character does. So all the doings of Oedipus, they tell us that he is doing very hasty actions, he is taking very rash decisions. What is said about him or her by other characters and the narrator. So whatever Tiresias says about him, or whatever the stories that come to us or the prophecies come about Oedipus, so they also reveal what he was, what the author says about the character. Or if author is commenting anything, like author can sometimes directly or indirectly comment about the main character as a narrator. So that is also something to tell us about the character. So in these 5 ways we can get to know how or what our character is. Direct characterization tells the audience what the personality of the character is. For example, if author himself is saying that the patient boy and quiet girl were both well-mannered and did not disobey their mother. So author is himself directly implying that the boy was patient and the girl was quiet. So this is a direct characterization. As far as indirect characterization is concerned, now it tells that it reveals the personality with certain passage of time through the speech, through the thoughts or effects on others towards a character, the actions and the looks. So all these things include the looks, action, effects, thoughts, speech. So they tell us indirectly how the character behaves or what is the bent of mind of the character. We see sometimes the character fighting with machines. So the leading character is struggling against those machines, which can be robots, which can be technology or any form of it. So in the sci-fi novels or science fiction novels, we often find a character or a human character struggling against the mechanical characters. We also see in Gothic novels or in the poetry of Coleridge, we find supernatural elements, and the leading character struggles against the supernatural powers. So supernatural powers are doing their work, and the leading character is protecting himself. This also happened in mythologies, especially in the Greek mythology. The setting is the time, location, like when or where the story takes place. This is called a setting. Setting is very important for the stories. For some stories, it is quite pertinent to have great setting, logical setting, because setting plays a role. Like in Return of the Native, the Atkin Heath, that very area where the protagonist is living, that is playing the role of a character. So that setting is very important sometimes. So this place, which is geographical location, this time, which is historical time period of the year, day, whatever it is going, or weather conditions, it is sunny, stormy, social conditions, it's French Revolution, or it's some technological revolution, or some particular mannerism or custom, a mood or atmosphere, like what is the feeling that is created in the beginning of the story, or is it bright or cheerful or dark or frightening? All these things are related to the setting of a novel or a play. Theme is generally very important. This is one or more than one elements around which the story is woven. So this is what the author wants to convey. So this is what he wants to convey about human nature, about the society, about anything that he's writing. For example, aristocracy is a theme. The individual versus society is the theme. Justice has been a very prevalent theme in many plays. So these are the themes, or like for example, aristocracy versus the downtrodden class. This has also been a major theme in many novels and plays. So this is some point of views around which the whole story is moving or woven. So point of view is the angle from which the story is told. So there's several ways of telling this story. There can be first person narration, like the story is told by the protagonist or another character who is the part of action, using I, me, we, that kind of words. There can be third person. The story may be told by someone who is not the part of action, using he, she, it, and they. There may be limited narration, like in which the narrator only knows what he, she experiences or learns about some way. Like the narrator's knowledge grows as the story unfolds, and at certain time, the reader may know more than the narrator. There is sometimes an omniscient narration, that all-knowing narrator knows all of the details about the events, characters, and reveals them to the reader, and the story now literary techniques, which are that narrative, the literary tools, everything that an author may choose to use to enhance their writing and convey meaning in a certain way. So figurative language and sound devices, these are examples of those literary techniques that we are going to discuss. So figurative language is the use of figures of speech, which are words or phrases that depart from everyday literal language in order to compare or to add emphasis and clarity. So these figures of speech are different from our colloquial language, our day-to-day conversation. Authors use figurative language to add interest and to evoke certain feelings in their readers. So let's see what language features are these. So first of all, we have allusion. So allusion is a reference within a work to something more famous outside it, such as a well-known person, some event, some story, a work of art. Like eating sweets is my Achilles' heel. So this is a reference towards Achilles, who was a mighty Greek hero who fought against Trojans, and he was destined not to die until or unless his heel is hit by something. So he died when an arrow hit his heel. So this is a person's particular weakness. So this is an allusion, which is a reference, normally not similar, but it helps, like it is not exactly the same, but we can use it to give reference of something. So an apostrophe is when an absent or dead person or thing is spoken to, as if it's present and able to understand. For example, if we are addressing twinkle, twinkle, little star. So there we find the use of apostrophe, which is used for an absent person or dead person or something, feeling that something is present and able to understand what we are saying. A cliche is a word or phrase that has become overly familiar or commonplace. So such phrase which is overly used, like no pain, no gain, honesty is the best policy. So such are cliches. Then hyperbole. So hyperbole is an exaggeration or overstatement. For example, I have a million friends, or I have a million things to do today. So certainly I don't have to do million things practically, but to create emphasis or exaggerate thing, we use hyperbole. Idioms are an expression that don't mean what they literally say. For example, it's raining cats and dogs outside. So it doesn't mean that even cats and dogs are falling down. It is only to give emphasis on something, or to give some emphasizing or exaggerating expression. So it means that it is raining too fast. Imagery is the use of vivid descriptive language, usually rich in sensory words that evoke one or all of the five senses. For example, the imagery used by John Keats, he uses his five senses: seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. So whenever we are talking about something, if we are making a descriptive use, so we should be using these sensory words, which are also named as imagery, like the crisp white snow floated down through the dark night sky. So this is a description which brings the exact view in front of our eyes. So this is how we describe some imagery. When John Keats talks about the flowers, he tells that he can smell them. He tells the taste of hemlock. He tells everything related. So this is the use that we are using the five senses to describe the things, like steaming hot and delicious pizza. So here, steaming hot, delicious, they are giving some a picture of those things using words, which brings to us a very fresh kind of or fresh baked pizza in front of our eyes. Irony is also used, and there are three types of irony. So irony is a difference between what is said and what is meant, or what is thought or what happens. So the difference between these things is called irony. So a reality and happening, expected and reality, uske darmiyan jo difference, we call that irony. So verbal irony occurs when the opposite is said from what is really intended. We can also call that sarcasm. For example, wasn't that a smart move? So that may not be a smart move. Or if I say that you are quite early today, or the person may be quite late. So that is the use of verbal irony. Dramatic irony occurs when there is a contrast between what a character says or what the reader knows to be true. Like Oedipus is saying so many things which the audience already knows that it is Oedipus who himself is a corruption, but he is not accepting the truth. Situational irony occurs when the outcome of situation is significantly different from what is expected or considered appropriate. For example, if I go to meet a person and try to give him surprise, and rather he gives me surprise and he is not at home. So this is situational irony. A metaphor is a comparison of two unlike things, using the verb to be, like am, are, was, and were. Like the test was a breeze. He was a lion in the battle. So a person and lion cannot be compared, but when we compare both of them, so we call it metaphor. Metonymy is substituting a word for another word closely associated with it. Like the pen is mightier than the sword. So here the pen is representing books and writing, and sword is representing the warfare. So the writer means to say that reading and writing, we can convey much material, or we can win battles with pen and paper better than using the swords. An oxymoron is a figure of speech that is usually one or two words and that combines two opposing or contradictory ideas. For example, same difference, or organized chaos, or happily married. So that can also be an oxymoron. So a paradox is a statement which is self-contradictory, unreasonable, or illogical. Like Nobody goes to that restaurant. It is too crowded. Like we are negating it, and then we are saying that nobody goes there because it is always too crowded. So either it is crowded or it is empty. So this is not said by this sentence. So this sentence is a paradox. Personification is giving human qualities to animals or objects. For example, the wind whistled as it blew throughout the forest. The queen moon was happy. The crops were dancing. So these are the human traits or qualities that we are giving to inhuman objects or to animals. A simile is comparison of two unlike things using like or as. For example, the girl was as bright as the sun. Belinda's eyes were as bright as the sun. Synecdoche is a statement that selects a part of a group to explain a whole group. For example, the alphabet is often referred to as the ABCs. So ABC stands for the alphabets, 1, 2, 3 stands for the whole numeric numbers. So this is the example of synecdoche. An understatement is like irony. So it is a figure of speech in which the writer or speaker deliberately makes a situation seem less important or serious. For example, it's just a scratch when there is a huge dent. So this is ironical in a way that if your car is hit and it is badly hit, and someone only comments that this is only a minor accident, this is only a scratch, which it is actually not. So this is understatement. Alliteration is the repetition of the initial letters or sounds in a series of words, especially of consonants, like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or how high his honor holds his haughty head. Some criminals commit crime using cars, can be caught by criminologists. So this is the use of alliteration. Assonance is also a repetition, but that is of vowel sounds in words or phrases that create a rhythm. For example, the man with the clanging band was a great fan. So this is also a rhythm, and there is repetition of vowel sounds. The man with the clanging band was a great fan. So you can see when I speak this sentence, you find a rhythm in that, and that rhythm is because of vowel sounds. So this is called assonance. We also have consonance, which is also repetition of same consonant two or more times in a line. For example, tumbling, bumbling, babbling, bubble. So tumbling, bumbling, and babbling, bubble. So these are the repetition of two consonants in the same line. There can be more than two. Dissonance or cacophony is a use of harsh sounds or unusual words, or group of unusual words that create a disturbing effect, and they catch the reader's attention. So like, for example, I hate being sick because causes are usually unknown. So because and cause, or because and causes, they're creating some disturbing effect and sound. So these are dissonance or cacophony. Onomatopoeia is a word that imitates the sound of the word as it is read. Like the exact sound is according to the spelling. So the spellings and sounds are same. So those are onomatopoeia, like buzz, thumb, pop, hiss, gush, scratch, screech. So these are the examples. Even the cuckoo is also example. Whereas a pun in a play that relies on a word having more than one meaning or sounding like another word. For example, I wondered why the ball was getting bigger, then it hit me. So this is having different meanings. So ball was not only getting bigger, but it was also drawing near. So when we have certain other techniques and we need to discuss them, so one of them is diction. So diction is the author's word choice, is lexicon. So he can choose formal, informal, colloquial, or slang language. Formal diction is usually found in academic text, academic papers, or discussions. Informal diction is used in conversation and is found in writing that has some lighter tone, a comedy, or sometimes humorous. Colloquial diction is the everyday usage of the particular group of people. For example, the word choice of people from certain profession or area. Like we write a letter to our friend, or if we are addressing people of same profession, so we use a jargon related to certain particular profession, like doctors, or at the same time the barristers, they use some particular jargon. Slang is defined as newly coined words, not acceptable yet for society, and they're not found in dictionary. So these are such words which are not accepted at formal usage. So society doesn't accept the formal use of them. Even dictionary doesn't accept them, but they are being used. So flashback is another technique, and it is when the author reveals an event that took place in the past. So he goes into the past and describes how the thing happened. Foil is a character who is to represent characteristics, values, or ideas which are opposing or opposite to another character, like especially the protagonist. So foils sometimes have those qualities which we are expecting in the main character. Like Creon is a foil to Oedipus, so we want that Creon's sanity should have been there in Oedipus. Foreshadowing is the time, or it is a kind of trait or technique when the author gives hints or clues to suggest what will happen as the story progresses. Like in Oedipus, we come to know that God commands us to expel from the land of Thebes an old defilement that it seems we shelter. That we need to find that person, hunt him down, and send him out of Thebes. So this is kind of foreshadowing that we know that what the author is planning, or what he is going to now. Symbolism refers to a symbol such as an object, color, person, place. They are used to represent an abstract idea or concept. A red rose, for example, is not a rose but also a symbol of love and beauty. Red is also the symbol for danger. A dove is not just a bird but is also a symbol of peace. Motive is a recurring important idea with structure or image. It is different from a theme because it can be expressed as a single word or phrase. For example, comparing a person's stages of life to seasons of the year. So this is this is some structure. It is basically different from a theme. Like we can express it as a single word or a single phrase. Like, and we can compare a person's stages of life to the seasons of the year, that in January he was baby, in December he was dead, like this. And in tone, it refers to the author's or narrator's attitude towards the story or subject. Some writers have very harsh tone, like Jonathan Swift was having harsh tone in Gulliver's Travels when he was referring to the society of 18th century England. So he was having a kind of ironic and harsh tone both at the same time. So his tone was harsh, it was critical, it was ironic. So this depends on author what kind of tone he carries throughout the play or novel. So this was all about the literary techniques, devices, and the literary terms. So I hope they are going to help you a lot in exam. All the best. I'm signing off. Stay tuned. Allah Hafiz.